Here we are, no morning broadcast, but we've got this evening broadcast going. I said we are starting at 7:30. I got 7:35. Yeah, I should say about, right? So I don't have a lot of slides for this week one, even though I could have a lot of slides. If you really want to achieve a lot of information, gain more, I'm going to give you a lot of information, but even gain more. I linked on my Facebook page. Go to my Firecatcher Ministry page. First thing is the Holy Land site, and he does about a 20-minute review, part one of Tel Dan. What's a tell? Remember, geez, what's a tell? Oh, when they build on a hill or they build city upon city, it becomes a hill, but it's usually it is on a raised area, on a hill, and so they call them a tell, like hill, mound. A little bit different definitions if you look around, but anyway. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jeroboam. Jeroboam is comes in after Solomon. Remember, Solomon followed the Lord. Solomon had great revelation from God. If God, people have different aspects. God knows everything. He's omnipresent and he's omniscient, all-knowing. And there's he doesn't know some things. Whatever your point of view, if he did know what Jeroboam was going to do or didn't, and the same with Solomon, he still, whether you say he did or didn't, he did choose to give him great revelation, right? Solomon was going to give him this great wisdom and all which he received, but in his later years, Solomon turned away from the Lord. Not good. Jeroboam even did worse, and I think the Lord appeared to him twice, but for sure the Lord appeared to Jeroboam once and made a great promise. And again, this has a lot to do with Tel Dan, the land of the Danites. So about that time, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem, and Ahijah the prophet of Shiloh met him on the way. I'm in 1 Kings 11:29 through 31, wearing a new cloak. And two of them were alone out in the country, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. He said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is the Lord, what the Lord God Israel says. See, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. Why? Because of what? Solomon's disobedience. So this original Jeroboam that the prophet Ahijah spoke to was foretelling the split of Israel into 10 nations and two. It makes me think about the 12 spies going in and what happened. The 12 spies, two came back with a good report. But anyways, I think of that. So here's his promise to Jeroboam from God. However, as for you, I will take you and you will rule over all that your heart desires. You will be king over Israel if you do whatever I command you and walk in obedience to me and do what is right in my eyes by obeying my decrees and commands, as David my servant did. I will be with you. I will give you a dynasty as enduring as the one I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. 1 Kings 11:37-38. What an incredible prophecy to Jeroboam. But what does Jeroboam do? Yeah, he decides to walk in the flesh, not by God's leading. But you know what, God, I know better than you. I got a better plan. Let me show you, God, how good my plan is. And he said his house and his kingdom, not only in his prophecy, would endure forever before me, that your throne will be established forever. 2 Samuel 7:16. Now, it would be just as enduring, his dynasty, his kingdom, his ruling, as David's. He did not choose to follow and believe God. So, and for this is what the Lord said. That was 2 Samuel 7:16. This is Jeremiah 33:17. For this is what the Lord says: David will never fail to have a man sit on the throne of Israel. Well, okay. So Jeroboam walked in the kingship with confidence, knowing God would put him there with a promise God would establish his throne, all that God required of him. What does he? Seek first the kingdom of God, right? Those kind of things. But anyways, with the promise he would establish his throne. All that God required is that he would walk in obedience to his command and do what was right in his eyes. An amazing promise. And with a better mediator, Jesus Christ, under, a more excellent mediator with a better covenant, better promises, don't think we don't have a more excellent thing. They were never promised all spiritual blessings, just for one out of many things we could pull out. So Jeroboam did not choose to walk in obedience to God. Even with this incredible promise, he chose to disobey. How good of God, Solomon, Jeroboam, to lay this out for them, and yet his refusal. I tell you, in the day of judgment, the great white throne judgment, not the resurrection of the just, but the resurrection of the unjust, we've got some kings that are going into the lake of fire. All right. Everything God instructed him to do and everything he knew that was right to do, he did just the opposite. And here are some examples. Jeroboam desecrated the priesthood and made up his own festivals. I'm not going into detail. 1 Kings 12, 31 through 33. Jeroboam ignored the word of the prophet and continued to sin. 1 Kings 13, 33 and 34. Jeroboam ultimately lost what God had promised to him because he refused to walk in obedience to God. 1 Kings 14, verses 8 and 9. Yeah, and then there's a second Jeroboam, which I'm not so much focused on here. All right, I'm going to close that out. I don't need that anymore. And let's get into my thing. I'm going to call it like bullet points, but I don't know. It would have been nice if I had a screen thing for them. But Dan, Tel Dan, the hill of Dan, is in the northern part of Israel. Very northernmost part. Beersheba is in the southern part. How far do you think, guessing, how far from northern Israel, Dan, the Danites were Danites, all the way to Beersheba? How far do you think it was? And this is a common term in the Bible. It would say all the way from Dan to Beersheba. I think it's 9 times in the Bible it speaks about from Dan to Beersheba. Well, you know what I think? I think of all the way from LA to New York. The difference is LA to New York is like 3,000 something miles. The distance between Dan and Beersheba is like 43 and a half miles. Encompassing, is how you say it, pretty much the length of Israel. And I've said before in the other things on these is that it's amazing how the climate changes from the north to the southern part. Here it'd be like, living in the north and, Montana or somewhere it's really lush and all, maybe Colorado, I don't know, up in the mountains of Colorado. And then you go south to New Mexico, maybe Texas, some of these other places. And it's pretty arid, right? Dry. Well, it happens in just a short distance in Israel. Now, so God appeared to Jeroboam, said he would bless him if he'd follow him. And what's he do? He turns to the way. And what's he do? He puts a golden calf to worship in Dan and in Bethel to the south. Oh, what a great king we have. He's given us golden calves to worship. No, it's a pretty devilish king, isn't he? So I'm going to show you some of these pictures. We'll start bringing some pictures up and I'll keep talking. So I'm going to kill my lights here. Put out my lights so that you see this. There, that's better. Now you can see. Isn't that nice at night? Oh, yeah. Now I'm glowing, aren't I? Hey, FC's glowing. Hope he's not radioactive. There, that's a little better. All right. So God gave Jeroboam a severe warning. We read that, and he just doesn't obey. Now, Mountain Hebron is off in the distance. It's the highest mountain in Israel at about, it's 9,000 something feet, 9,232 feet above sea level. The majority of water comes to Israel from Mount Hermon, not Hebron. I'm correcting myself, Mount Hermon. And so the snow melt from that mountain is enough that it settles in the mountain and gives water all the year. This is a picture I took of the, I think I took the Jordan. I had two. I didn't have the other one that I was getting from a Bible Lands Companion, which was part of my book I took. Anyways, I think this is the one I took. If not, there's one or two or three of these that are from the Bible Lands Companion, I believe. So if I don't give credit to them, I want you to know they came from there. So I want to give you a quick overview. So this water that feeds the Jordan, and this is the Jordan, like one of the main springs that feeds the Jordan. So they had plenty of water, and it's a very lush place. I wish I had taken some pictures of the lushness. It was, oh, you wouldn't call it like the Amazon, but it was very, well, like here you can see in the pictures, there's just a lot of growth. This whole area was like that. And on a hot day, all that shade in the stream and all, it's not really a river, were incredible. Now, it started out with the Canaanites, and the Canaanites had, this is called from the Bronze area. I don't even think they call it the Bronze Gate, but before they built them of stone, this would have been like mud and clay. They used bricks. And this was discovered, I don't remember how long ago, but this gate not long ago. And it is, they covered it up. I don't know the timing of these things because it was a very weak entrance to Dan. So it got covered it up. The Canaanites had this. You'll know why in a few minutes. And here's another picture with me in front of it, and I lost my hat. A good hat I took on the thing. Yeah, you got to keep track of everything. So now this is coming to one of the main gates that leads into Dan, and it would actually be on the left. And you're seeing part of this wall. Different people say 30 to 50 feet. Some say 60-foot tall, and then at least 7 meters wide. What's that? 21 feet. Yeah, some say even much wider than that. And I probably come across it in a bit, but I think they say up to like 120 feet wide. And I'll get to that in a little bit. So now I'm going to go a little left of this view. And up here is the gates. Now, again, a lot of this has been knocked down and stuff, and some of it has been rebuilt in part, but not to the original height. So, these are all the way around walled cities, protected, very wide at the bottom, very steep, eh, good protection against the enemy, right? And then this is we're just going up that hill a little, and we're looking into this gate. And as I remember, there's a double gate here. As I remember, I don't know why I didn't take as many pictures here. Now, just inside these gates on the left, there's this area, and this would have been an area where, I mean, you could have had like guards and all in places, but as I understanding this area, and there's some wooden benches there. Yeah, that's added by man. They would have had stone, but where uh people in the city could come and communicate and meet. I don't know, you want to say strangers, people going in and out. So, like a visiting area, opening area to the city. Remember in the Bible, the men would sit at the gate of the city a day. So, for the day, they might be here and they would talk to people as they come and go. This would have been that kind of area. And we're going now, this is up the hill, actually a ways from there. And it covered, when the Canaanites had this land, it was about, this city area itself was about 25 acres. In the time of Dan, it was about 50 acres. So you think, that doesn't seem very big, but yeah, this was the tribe of Dan. And you got to remember, it's much different than we think of today. So we've talked about the abundant water supply, need for life. It's a very lush area. You're seeing trees in some of these pictures, but we had to hike. I don't know if we hiked a quarter mile, half a mile up through this area of Dan, and it was just incredible. It was like, again, it was almost like a jungle to me, but not as, I wouldn't call it jungle, and very uh, what is the term we use? A lush area compared to southern Israel. Now, Okay, I've explained Canaanites, 25 acres. The city wall, here's that information I have, 30 to 50 feet, even 60 feet, the Bible Companion says. And it was 30 to, let me see, I have height 30, 50 feet, but I have wrong information here. Uh, and at its base, pretty darn wide at the base of the wall. Now, the city was identified as Laisha, Lashish. Yeah, I think that's how you'd say. I would say it, and then also Leshem. Before it was captured by the tribe of Dan in the period of Judges, this is what it was called by the Canaanites. Then renamed Dan by the Danites after what? One of the original 12 tribes. Dan, the tribe of Dan, was assigned a different area a little further south, but they found it difficult to deal with in the area they were allotted, which was between Jerusalem and the Mediterranean Sea, and therefore decided to go north in search of new territory. Really, it's I don't know all the details. I've told you I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm not a Bible historian, but it's like the disobedience of not going in and taking the charge of the area. Remember, they were supposed to go into the promised land and destroy the enemy. If they didn't, it'd be lots of trouble for them. And they just didn't. If they had, the place we're at would have probably been okay. And you'll see why in a minute. It takes a strong people to defeat a strong people. A weak people cannot defeat a strong people. A fearful people cannot defeat a strong people. So, since the tribe of Dan failed to take the original territory allotted to them, they captured and moved this area. And we're going to get into this altar area in a little bit. So, I'm just going to let that set. I want to read from Judges 18, 26 through 32. But the people of Dan took what Micah had made and the priest who belonged to him. And when they came to Laish, to the people quiet and unsuspecting, hey, these are cool people, right? Yeah, quiet and unsuspecting from the ESV, and struck them with the edge of sword and burned the city with fire. See, it was easy to take. The promised land that they were originally given, they needed to kick some booty, but they didn't do that. And in this picture, just to mention it, we're looking toward the altar, which I'll get some closer pictures. And then behind it, where there's people up a little higher, is where he put one of these golden calves, where Jeroboam did that. But anyways, I'm going to go back to read. So the Danites struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. And there was no deliverer because it was far from Sidon. Sidon was only 10 or 15 miles away, but in the hills toward the Mediterranean. And they weren't in a buddy system with these people. There was no deliverer because it was far from Sidon. And 10 or 15 miles today, hey, strike up some F-15 fighter jets, get the guys in the cockpit. That might take, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. I don't know exactly. But all I know is, man, they put on the afterburners and this kind of distance, they'd been there in 1 minute, Yeah, we know. So, but it says there was no deliverer because they had no dealings with anyone. This is why the family of God is so important. We need the family to stand together. I think of like Second Amendment rights and things like this. You have to take a stand, and you need a family and grouping you can stand with. If there was an attack of an enemy, no one's going to stand too well on their own, even a single family. But the Danites came into here because these people were like, they're a pushover. And so what do? They burn it with fire and they kill the people because they weren't expecting anything. Now, anyways, we're going to move on. So this is the northernmost part of Israel. And let's see, they had no dealings with anyone, the people that lived in Laish. It was the valley that belongs to Beth Rahab. Then they built then the Danites, so they rebuilt the city and lived in it, and they renamed the city Dan, and after the name of Dan, their ancestor, was born to Israel. But the name of the city was Laish at first. This was renamed about 1350 BC, if numbers mean something to you. And people of Dan set up a carved image for themselves. And Jonathan, the son of Gershom, not Jonathan, the Saul guy, sons, right? This guy, Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses. Some of them, like King James, say the son of Manasseh because they don't want to say Moses. Oh, this grandson of Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, so the grandson of Moses, he was pretty corrupt. Not so hot, right? He wasn't a hot dude for the Lord either. And his sons were priests to the tribe of Danites until the day of captivity of the land. So they set up Micah's carved image that he had made as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. Okay. And again, Dan is part of the northern 10 tribes of Israel, with the 2 southern being in Judah or Judea. The same thing, just different. Judah, Judea. Sidon was on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, like I said, not far away. But back then, you want to get some people over there to fight. Too late. 3 days a week to get your army over there isn't going to help. I've already talked about from Dan to Beersheba. We'd say like LA to New York. They would do this. And it was only, what did I say, 43, 44 miles, like 43 and a half miles. All right. Now, this is where the altar is. So let's go up. Some of these, they're not big enough that you can really see them. But this is, if I remember right, if I blow this up, it's like, yes, to me, when I see it blown up, this is shows them doing animal sacrifice there. And let's see here. And this talks about the censers that they would take. The censers would have like the coals to start the fire. And this was a place, I'm going to back up from there. This was off to the side where they could have, fire burning to bring in to the main altar. Now this is before the altar. They said there's bones and stuff that was found in there. No one knows exactly its purpose, but one of this cistern's or well's purpose, it isn't that deep, could have been that when you start doing animal sacrifices, you have a lot of blood going all over the place. So it could be a place where they carried with pitchers or containers water to wash off the blood from the sacrifices. Oh yeah, and this is my comedian one. All right, you want to go to the Israelite gate or do you want to use the bathrooms? Yeah, that's my humor thing. I don't know why I took that. Don't ask me. Let's see, I'm going to blow this up for me to see. This is this area called the Sacred Precinct of the King. Let's see. Following the division of the kingdom of Solomon in 930 BC, so Jeroboam, son of Nebat, established a cult at Dan, an alternative to the one temple at Jerusalem where they worshiped the one true God. He placed a golden calf in the city, of course, here and in that place to the not Beersheba, but I'll find it. I'll see it in a minute, I'm sure. And so we put the golden calf in the city, and now we're worshiping in high places. We're worshiping not the one true God. So in the Hellenistic period, the cult, I can't even see it. The cultic precinct was surrounded by a wall that is visible to this day. A bilingual Greek-Aramaic inscription that was found in this site attests to this area, and they also found that when the Assyrians took over, that it mentions that they doing greater than. That's going to be the best way I'm going to put it. Now this is behind the altar where this golden calf would have been. So behind us, a little to the right, was the altar, and what they do is they do sacrifices. They face the golden calf that Jeroboam set up. And I want to go back to that one. No, not that. That one will do. This one will do. This is where the altar is. That Eastern in front of this, to our left a little bit. But this is a representation of what they believe or understand the horns to be. You can see these And it's made out of metal, as I remember, but you have these curved arches up there, and these would have been the horns of the altar as best understood by historians and all. All right, let me get back. Okay, so let me read some more. These are rooms. This was off to the right of, maybe it would be where they would keep a couple of the animals that they're going to sacrifice. And I don't know all the details, do I? No. Okay. Um, yeah. All right. So I got one more to show. Okay, and that's area. This could have been another area. They could have had animals. That could have been a meeting area. Who knows? Oh, the modern waste can. Pay no attention. Right? All right, let's get back to get my lights on here. And I've got a little more to share with you about this. All right, so we'll close that out. Yay. All right. So I want to read a little more about this. I want to go to my Firecatcher Ministry page and listen to that part 1 on Tel Dan. I bullet pointed sort of a lot of the points. It gives more detail. And there's a part 2 you might want to check out too. So I'm going to find, here it is. Let me read this to you, okay? So I know, yeah, this is boring, this is whatever. But look, this is part of our, I don't know if you want to say exactly heritage, but I mean, these are things that finally led up to Christ coming and Christianity. And you see what happened when people, and we understand it by reading the word and now looking at these places, when people disobeyed God, when Jeroboam brought in these animal the worship of the golden calf and all that, Bethel, that it really in time caused all Israel to sin. What does the scripture say? There's something about, I could look it up and I might miss it. I think it's 1 Corinthians 7:14. But that if you hang out with corrupt people, you have corrupt communication, some of these things, what happens is you become like them. And so Jeroboam, with his influence, when God had offered this incredible, position to him, he rejects it. Oh my gosh. And God has offered us so much more in so many ways. What does it say? How can we neglect so great a salvation? We don't want to be like dogs that return to their vomit, right? Okay, let me read some of this. Maybe it'll interest you, maybe not. See, and some of this is going to repeat some of what I said and also some additional insights. The city of Dan was named after Dan, the 5th son of Jacob and the 1st son of Rachel's servant Bill. Yeah, that's too much. Just a second. Okay. Bilhah. Bilhah? Well, Dan means judge, Genesis 30, verse 6. Before the Danites conquered Dan, it was called, remember what we call it? Laish. Judges 18, verse 7. And Lashem in Joshua 19, verse 47. It's the northern end of Israel. It's the Jordan River and Valley goes through here. Let's see. Yeah, the Jordan River Valley and along one of the tributaries of the Jordan. It's the most major spring and tributary of it. No wonder it was so lush. No wonder when the Danites went and didn't like the land given to them because the Philistines were too tough because they weren't submitting to God and driving out the inhabitants and all and having great victory. Oh, let's go over here. This is the easy people. And can you see that when tough times make strong people, easy times make weak people? They went for the easy times. It made him a weak people, and they allowed Jeroboam to come in with this golden calf worship. What a mess, right? Okay. The 50-acre city was a very powerful city with a wall. Now this is 60 foot by up to 175. It says 175 foot thick, so wide at the base. Which the other information I don't have that, but I'm not an archaeologist, so yeah, I need to go there and dig some, right? Traditionally, it was Dan, on the northern border of Israel, which is reflected by the phrase from Dan to Beersheba. We've discussed that. You'll find that in a number of places in the Bible. I'm not going to give you all the verses. You write me, I'll give them to you. Dan was at or desirably located on the trade route to the Syrian coast, approximately halfway between Damascus and Tyre. Remember, we've talked about Via Maris. That route goes through here. So we had Solomon's northern temple, whatever. Geez, we did it in a broadcast. Um, Maybe it's in my notes, all the way to Tel Megiddo, remember? So this is on that route. So you've got from Europe coming across, and you got from, yeah. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Let's see if I, pretty sure I wrote it down. Okay, this is another northern city, Tel Dan, which is along Via Maris, Maris trade route, which links Africa, Egypt, and Europe, which we've talked about in Tel Megiddo and Tel Hatzor, Hazor, right, in previous things. This was, look, I was there 2 weeks, and this is only like the second day or something of our trip. I mean, we're barely scratching this information, and just amazing. Okay, let me go back to where I was. Now, Dan is first mentioned in Genesis 14, verse 14, when Abraham perturbed, yeah, he was perturbed. He pursued Kedor, Kedor, Laomer, Kedor Lamor. And that's the way I said it. You'll say it better. Lemur, whatever. King of Elam, and 3 other kings who had defeated the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he plundered their cities. It was at Dan that Abraham, along with 318 fighting men that he had trained, the scriptures mention them. He had a trained force, 318 men, not thousands, and 318 trained fighting men as allies engaged this Kedar Lamor, routing the kings and their armies, eventually recovering the plunder and rescuing Lot at Horbath, which is north of Damascus. Remember, I'm reading the Bible, Land's Companion, I got by going on this journey, this pilgrimage, which I don't think I put in there. This would be pilgrimage number 5 or something. So having a good fighting force, or people that know how to fight, are ready to fight as needed, is always keeps you in a good standing. The people, when Dan went in there, the tribe of Dan, and took over, they were, what did it say? They were like, I'm going to say like a weak people, but the Bible puts it, or at least in the ESV, they were a quiet and unsuspecting people. I just leave them alone. Nope. So there was nothing. Come on. We could have, quiet and unexpected. We could have probably took 100 people in there and kicked their butt. I don't know. Do I? No, I don't actually know. But you get the idea. All right. You take the easy route, and you make a weak people eventually. So taking the easy route is not always the best way to go in life. And the Bible, Jesus Christ never declared we were on the easy road, did he? We're on the high road, the heaven road, God's highway. My way or the highway? I'll take God's highway. How about you? So 318 fighting men, Abraham kicked their, yeah. So when Joshua and the tribes of Israel conquered much of Israel, the tribe of Dan was assigned an area toward the sea. This is more toward Sidon, toward the Mediterranean. It would have been a great place, right? But yeah, the Philistines, man, I think they can kick our butt. What happened? Some of those 10 spies that died off, and the people, what were they still, were their ancestors still with their input? So, however, the Amorites confined the Danites to the hill country when they were supposed to take this area, not allowing them to come down to the plain. Judges chapter 1, verse 34. Thus, they looked for another place to live and decided the Canaanite town of Laish. They called what? Dan. They conquered and renamed it. Yeah. However, the Danites began to worship idols. Oh my gosh. Micah employed Jonathan, the grandson of Moses, and son as priest to preside this idol worship. The ancient Hebrew scribes were so embarrassed that Moses' grandson would officiate in an idol shrine, they changed the text of Judges 18, verse 30, to read Manasseh instead of Moses. I mentioned that earlier, but that's a better explanation, which is why some Bible versions have Moses and others have Manasseh in that verse. Okay, I have a little bit more and we're done. 1 Kings 11. The United Kingdom of Israel split into the two countries of northern Israel, the 10 tribes, and Judah, the southern 2 tribes. Let's see, 2 countries. They made Jeroboam king of Israel, 10 northern tribes. Afraid the 2 kingdoms would unify again and he would lose his kingdom when God had told him he would be victorious. He would be like David. How many times does God promise us great and precious promises? So, afraid the 2 kingdoms would unify, he'd lose the kingdom. Jeroboam did many things to make Israel different from Judah. One thing he was to make the 2 golden calves, placing one in Bethel in Israel, the other in the south Israel, and the other in Dan here in Tel Dan in North Israel. These continued to be worshipped throughout Israel's history in spite of the efforts of some reformers and prophets to stop it. There was a prophet who came along. Let's see. Yeah, I have a little bit on this here. 80 years after, so the Syrians took captive the northern 10 tribes originally, okay, or later, in about 722 BC. Remember, it was like 1500 something. I said they came and tribe of Dan came in, kicked butt, and took it over. Of course, they didn't have much to kick, right? There was no Second Amendment stores to defend the people there in Laish. Oh, yeah, forgive me for my things if you have trouble with it. Now, so the Assyrians took captive the northern 10 tribes in about 722 BC. It wasn't that year. It was a time of a number of years. The Assyrians tortured the Israelites in ways that were pretty sick. I've heard of some of these things. Yeah, it was pretty nasty. Any they captured outside the city, they would torture outside the city, and as they're torturing, they're screaming and they're killing them. They'd say, you know what, if you just give up the city, we'll just make it easy on you. Nope. Some of the Israelites escaped and went to the south and went to Jerusalem. And that's when Hezekiah was there. And what did Hezekiah do when they come and tried to take Jerusalem? No. Hezekiah sought the Lord, refused to give in to their bad news. They're going to lose all these other places. We kicked, the kings or whatever. We took them all. You think you're going to stand? You're much smaller than them and all. And what to do? God delivered them. Wasn't the army heard a sound and they went off and, killed themselves or something. It's amazing what God will do for one or the small group who stand when the big group doesn't even take a stand. So I mentioned a number of Israelites fled. Hezekiah was there. So 80 years later, as a result of reading scripture, Josiah became king of Judah in the south and chose to follow God with all his heart. He had one of the biggest, I'm going to call it restorations, some might say revival, restorations Israel ever experienced. He destroyed the golden calves Jeroboam had put in place. Okay, I'm about to finish up here. Not much more. Okay. In Revelation 7, verses 4 through 8, there are 12,000 people from each tribe of Israel counted and sealed for protection, but none from the tribe of Dan. There's no explanation for this, but it is possible, here's one that's given, that since the Danites moved to the northern border of Israel and are always the first line of attack from invading enemies, no Danites may have survived. The other one, I've heard, is that the tribe of Dan decided because of their idol worship, they aren't numbered in Revelation. It's like, if you guys are just going to worship idols, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you out. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that because the Bible, as far as I know, doesn't tell us. So we got two options to go with, whether they're right or not. I don't know. So archaeological digs have uncovered parts of the massive wall, many other structures, including an arched gateway, which locate the southeastern corner of the wall, along with two guard towers on the north and south. The entire structure was about, now these like guard structures, it says 10 foot tall by 45 foot wide, 45 foot deep. Remember, this would be at the top of the wall, so it's already like 45, 60 feet high, and then these towers on top of that. Kind of think of a castle. Think of something like that. So 45 foot wide, 45 foot deep, 10 foot tall. Again, above what would be there for the protective wall. Today, the city of Dan is the center of an extensive nature reserve watered by the same Jordan River tributary that was there thousands of years ago. Boy, if Jeroboam had just obeyed the voice of the Lord, how incredible would the testimony of him being the word of God, it would be like David, a man after his own heart, but he refused it. And Solomon really, in the end, went the same way. So some of the, I'm just going to give you, in Genesis 14, we find Abraham routes Kedor, Lamor, how do you say it, and rescues Lot. Joshua 19, verse 47, and Judges 1:34. The Danites not conquer the territory Joshua assigned to them. Again, why? Judges 18, Danites capture and destroy Laish, built the city of Dan, and began to idol worship. Jeroboam gets in there and totally messes it up. So that 1 Kings 11, verse 28, the rise of Jeroboam in Solomon's court. 1 Kings 12, verse 29, Jeroboam places the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. And Revelation 7, verses 5 through 8, no Danites are mentioned as sealed. You wonder why not? Anyway, what an incredible journey. Part 5 of my pilgrimage, as I'm going to put it here. And to see this stuff, to recognize that where people stood for God, God was always there to protect them. Hezekiah and the ones that did escape to Jerusalem, a walled city, and it wasn't that big. And these Assyrians conquered these places without much trouble. And this little thing they couldn't take. Why? Because Hezekiah had his heart submitted to God. Listen, so the time of that is, Isaiah and maybe Jeremiah, kind of in that period, as I remember. All right. Anyway, that's a little bit on Tel Dan, the land of the Danites. And bless the Lord, my soul, and not forget all of his benefits and care. And I declare life over you because God already has. So we're just agreeing with what he has declared. Amen. All right. Great rest.